Balto and the Great Race. Chapter 11. Past Port Safety. In spite of the storm, the team was making good time. Cousin guessed they were about 10 miles from Port Safety. He was hoping they would soon be safe and warm when suddenly the team came to a full stop. Cousin leaped off the sled. He kept one hand on the line connecting the dogs as he felt his way toward Balto. Powerful, blinding gusts of wind struck Cousin. If he became separated from the team, he might not find his way back to them. Running his hands from one dog to the next, he found Balto standing rigid. Cousin could not see even 8 inches in front of him, so he ran his hands over his lead dog to feel for a clue. Balto was not holding himself like a dog who had lost the trail. His body position showed that he sensed something dangerous ahead. As Cousin ran his hands down Balto's legs, he immediately discovered the problem. Balto was almost up to his knees in water. They were on the ice, and it had begun to give way. If Balto had taken 1 or 2 more steps, he would have gone through the ice. The dogs behind him, linked together by the harnesses, would also have gone down. Taking Balto's harness in one hand, Cousin led the team around to the left and back in the direction they had come from. Once they were safely away from the broken ice, Balto leaned forward in his harness to show he was ready to go on. Cousin climbed back onto the sled. Balto carefully picked his way forward. After what seemed like an eternity, Cousin felt the sled tip skyward as it was pulled up a riverbank. Balto had found a secure passage over the ice. For the moment they were safe. Invisible to Cousin, the trail inched closer to the sea on the team's left. The team had to pull the sled out onto the ice of Norton Sound for a short distance before reaching Port Safety. The sled now seemed to be going over a fairly flat surface, so Cousin guessed that they might already be on the ice. It was not smooth going. The ice was taking a beating from the blizzard. The blowing wind was pushing it toward the barrier of the coast, forcing whole slabs up and on top of each other. Driftwood had been tossed up out of the ocean and lay everywhere. The dog team had to be very careful not to run into it. A fierce gust of wind tossed the sled high into the air as if it were a child's toy. Cousin felt the sled flying for what seemed like an eternity as he clung to the handles. Finally, he landed on the ice with a sickening thud. He skidded for many feet before coming to a stop. Still clinging to the sled, which was now on top of him, Cousin caught his breath as Balto barked anxiously. Cousin was shaken but not hurt, and he could tell by the sound of Balto's bark that the dogs were all right as well. They had been very lucky. Cousin climbed to his feet. Then he ran his hands over the dogs' harnesses to make sure the lines were clean and untangled. Balto stood very still, understanding what needed to be done before they could go on. One of the other dogs impatiently leaped to his feet and began to pull. Balto barked and growled at him until the dog sat down again. While Balto kept the team in line, Cousin carefully turned the sled over to an upright position. Checking the runners, he was relieved to find that neither of them had broken in the accident. In fact, the sled didn't seem to be damaged at all. They could head on to Port Safety without losing any more time. The musher quickly ran his hands over the back of the sled to make sure the crate of antitoxin was still tightly tied on. The dogs tensed as Cousin cried out in dismay. The crate was gone. Giving Balto a command to stay put, the musher dropped to his knees. Gripping a line leading back to the sled with one hand, he blindly felt his way over the snow and ice. He swiped furiously in the dark with his free hand. Every few seconds, he inched forward a foot or so and swept his hand in an arc through the snow. Finally, his groping hand connected with something solid and box-like. It was a miracle. In the midst of the darkness and snow, Cousin had found the crate. He dragged it back to the sled and tied it on. The worst of their troubles was behind them. They encountered no more obstacles. Balto led purposefully, and the dogs reached incredible speeds. The wind died down a little. Cousin kept a lookout for Port Safety. Suddenly, he saw the Port Safety roadhouse, where he was to transfer the serum to Ed Rohn and his team. All the lights were out. Cousin thought quickly. He knew that Rohn was probably at the roadhouse but asleep. Rohn could be awake and have his team in their harnesses within an hour. But every second counted, and Balto had never looked stronger or more determined. Clearly, the lead dog did not want to stop. Nome was just over 20 miles away. Balto's confidence decided the matter. The team sped by Port Safety without a backward glance. Several hours later at dawn, Balto and the team thundered into Nome. Slowing the sled to a crawl on Front Street, the dogs barked and howled in celebration. In Nome's tiny hospital, the light in Dr. Welch's office suddenly flicked on.